Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is the joint ODA UWTSD lecture delivered by Joe Ashburner, MSc. Joe is somebody who works in social values, talks about that, and works in the social enterprise sector. She's an Dynevorian. Too sure which year she came here, which is a bit strange, but and she knew where the head office was, which she probably explained it all. So she's a graduate from UWTSD, and she's going to give us a talk on the perception of social value in business. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to put this down to me. So yeah, my name is Joe Ashburner, and I recently graduated this year, in fact, with an MSc in International Innovation Management. 20 years exactly to the month that I graduated first time round. So my personal, professional and academic interest in social values stems from working within the social enterprise sector for over 20 years. I've been conflicted on what to talk to you about this evening. I confess to being guilty of falling asleep in many lecture halls, such as being the monotony and dragging of time when someone is attempting to make a point. So in the spirit of keeping you all awake and attentive and being completely unconventional and unpredictable as a storyteller, I've chosen to mix the random with the academic. Oh.
That's like random.
It's not. What she's doing there. Right. So I've chosen to mix the random with the academic by giving you a flavour of the past 30 years of my life, sprinkled with the fairy dust of what I hope will impress you as academics speak, learned under the duress of the strict supervision which culminated in being awarded a Masters in Science in Innovation this year. This will be an erratic and bumpy ride, so bear with me, please. I can just get the thing to work. Right. I've got it. So in 2019, I jumped at the opportunity to join the International Innovation Management Masters in Science through MAID at UWTSD. The postgraduate qualification promised to give me the unique opportunity to explore contemporary approaches to product development and the technical challenges involved in their practical management in the modern international arena. I saw this as the opportunity to drag the old grey matter out of storage, meet a new group of people, and expand my professional horizons. And then COVID-19 kicked in. But it was perfect timing for me, and I loved it every minute. I worked through the pandemic, and then every Tuesday evening and Friday, I joined the group uni Zoom sessions. I loved the reading, the research, the creation of presentations, absorbing the contribution of visiting lecturers, my co-students, and my primary lecturer was awe-inspiring, a motivational and supportive maverick who helped me slowly arrive at the realisation that change was possible for me personally, and the change needed to stop killing myself working 7 days a week and missing out on valuable quality time with family, grandkids and friends. And when my beloved dad passed away midway through the course, everything changed. After several false starts on the subject for my thesis and a year away from my studies to recover from the grief of loss, I grappled with the focus of my research within the expansive subject of social value and its importance to all of us. Having lived it, worked it, and battled with trying to do business for good for years, I finally settled on exploring the meaning of social value itself, how it affects the success of businesses in the context of profit for society, for the many, not just for the few, and set about within that remit to examine the challenges of economic globalization and the inevitable consequences if unilateral positive action is not taken immediately. At the start of the research process, and despite years of working in the field, it became clear to me that I was still fundamentally unsure as to what was going on and what social value business involved, being or doing in a business context while still remaining true to social values within business. So I know what I know, and I know that establishing a successful business is to be difficult at the best of times. But I also know that to establish a successful business with strong social values within a still unclear global framework of ever-changing business structures, priorities of profit and political agendas is harder still. So my presentation to you today mixes the results of that research with my own lived experience and the conclusions I've arrived at, repugnant and otherwise. So social value in business refers to the positive impact a company creates for society and the community through its activities, going beyond just making money and more about doing things that make people's lives better and contribute to the overall well-being of communities. A means to creating additional social, economic and environmental well-being above and beyond the core values of goods, service or work. Beneficial externalities of social value have traditionally been confined to areas including education or infrastructure, but it's better understood now more than ever that the way we purchase goods and services has a direct positive or negative effect on society. Purchasing a pair of shoes that are environmentally irresponsible has negative consequences, both for the environment and society. Purchasing the same pair of shoes but made from recycled materials and from a company that provides training to young disadvantaged people to help with their career path has positive effects. Both options have the pair of shoes, but the latter example significantly increases the social value element. Consumer desire for information about what to buy and how to buy is on the rise. Increasing attention is paid to companies behind products which disappoint when actions don't meet expectations, and they're in the news every day. Engaged consumers act as round-the-clock auditors of corporate conduct, and gone are the days when businesses could hide behind a socially responsible brand or where marketing controlled the story. It is, however, apparent that it's not currently practical to adopt a rigid set of top-down agreed indicators of social value industry-wide because of the variety of social value, the danger of quantitative indicators not capturing some essential qualitative data, the mean proportionality in time spent in any measurement exercise, the trade-off between achieving comparability between activities through using common indicators against identifying indicators that are best suited to the process being measured, and the pace of development of social value measurement making it impractical to currently identify a long-term standard. So basically, no one knows what social value is, no one knows how to qualify it, no one knows how to measure it. When I set up an independent micromanaging business in Vietnam in 2004, based on principles of ethical and sustainable and fair manufacturing policies, I was for the large part humoured for being conscientious by suppliers, retailers and consumers, and there wasn't a week when I wasn't asked to explain what I was trying to communicate in practical terms. I hadn't got a label on it at that time, but I knew from working with my father for many years that it was really important to treat people with respect. You get more out of them, and if it's a team effort and you pull together, then you get better results. So when I returned to the UK and established a further registered social enterprise manufacturing business in South Wales in 2011, the term social value, whether in terms of ecologically, ethically or person-centred relevance, was still in its infancy, and from the perspective of frontline of business, a relative unknown factor for consumers when considering purchasing decisions. Although commercial perception of social value in business has moved on and grown into its own ambitions, I recognise now that rather as when I first passed my driving test, I recklessly drove a vehicle without understanding how the machine I was driving was put together, how it functioned and what could be done before it started to go wrong, or what to avoid before I had an accident and potentially do damage. But that's the same as everybody. So now I would ask you to allow me to go back to the beginning of my journey to put things into context. So I bombed school. I went from a Welsh hill farm and primary school in Meath to an English public boarding school in Worcester, where I wasn't permitted to utter a word in a Welsh accent and was forced to undergo 3 months of sponsored extensive elocution lessons. Thanks, Grandma. I was a fast learner. I had to be 5, but I bored quickly of walking 2 by 2, lights out at 7:30 p.m. in the dorms, hospital corner bed inspections, and the overbearing, archaic discipline. I rebelled at everything except sport. I was not allowed to join the brownies. I organised midnight feasts in the communal school bathroom. I was really rebellious. And I frequently crept down fire escape late at night to run to the local park and play netball with the local kids. I was a tomboy and angry, and I hated the cliquey girly groups and the limited social expectations of being trained to be a young lady. Being in an all-girls environment, having been brought up on a working farm, was traumatic. I'd been driving a tractor at the age of 10. My father did not discriminate between boys and girls. I was basically, child labour, but I mean, that's why you have lots of kids. So. And I loved it. And I was brought up on the drummer, so just above Skew, and that Dad was Forestry Commissioner as well, and 400 acres of land, some of which is now council houses, but that was where I grew up. And it was incredible. Mum used to ring the ding school bell at the back of the farmhouse, and then wherever we were, whether it was miles away, we could hear that bell and we knew it was time to come home for food. And I couldn't do that these days. So at the age of 14, the ever-patient headmistress of my boarding school suggested that as she was retiring, it would be wise if I left as well. My mother was horrified at the social embarrassment, and my father, cool as ever, gave me free choice to choose a local Swansea state school and to deal with consequences thereof. So thinking I was clever because it was co-ed, lots of boys, I chose Dynevor as the closest to our home. And that was what is now the bright blue building down next to Morgan's Hotel on the corner. That was our home. I spent the next 2 years experiencing freedom and fear like I'd never thought possible at Dynevor. I somehow managed to achieve 6 O-levels. Those are the exams I turned up for, despite mitching, eating chips and cockles from the market for lunch every day and escaping to play sport on the beach near Vicky Park. I was moved as a last resort to St Michael's in Fletchley after 2 years at Dynevor, where I lasted less than a year before my mother and I fell out for once and for all. And at the fit of peak, I went abroad 2 months before my A-level exams and ended up working around Europe for 2.5 years. I eventually agreed to come home and tried to settle into studying law at Swansea College, where I lasted 6 weeks before being unceremoniously sent to London to stay with a geriatric uncle and get a job, for God's sake. During the next 7 years, I worked hard, played hard. I was a yuppie, I travelled a lot, and I ended up running a bar on the beach in Turkey, where I found my tribe. Fast forward 6 years, and I returned to Swansea to give birth in Singleton so that my son would be born Welsh and be in line to play for Wales one day. And that's him at the back of the room, larger. 3 weeks later, and 5 weeks before my due date, my husband of 6 years ran off with another woman and simultaneously emptied my bank account and maxed out every line of credit I'd built to that point, leaving me pregnant, penniless, alone, and humiliated. Without money, I had to give up the house I'd just rented, and my son and I, he was then not even 3 months, became homeless for a few months. I've had the presence of mind to buy a small red polo car on my return to Swansea from Turkey, and this then became our home for several months. I got a job as a day nanny for a little girl the same age as Zach, which meant that while the unsuspecting parents went to work, I was able to wash our clothes, feed and bathe Zach alongside Phoebe, and then drive to a supermarket car park and blanket up for the night. No one except my father knew of our predicament until I tracked down another old Dynevorian, Karina Edwards, as she is now, the only schoolmate I'd ever kept in touch with, who knowingly of old and without judgment talked me through my options. On the advice I received from Corrie and the government funding available for mature students, I was then 34, I started on Foundation Art and Design course at what was then Swansea Institute in Alex House in September, and 2 months later I was given a council house in Port Tennant. 4 years later, I achieved a first-class honours BA degree in service pattern design and was awarded a European Social Fund scholarship to study for a Masters in Enterprise at UWTSD in Manchester, all on my ready-made concept for a product and a business which I worked on from year 2 of the degree. At graduation, I was chosen to exhibit at the New Designers exhibition in London, where I was listed in the top 10 Hot New Designers for Children by WGSN, which is the Worth Global Style Network, and the Global Trend Forecasting Bible. And here's my proud father and I on my graduation day, and a few articles that were published about my work. And there's me standing in front of some of my print work, all of which was taken from images that my son had drawn while he sat next to me patiently in lectures given by usually Aussie And he drew these pictures, and then I transposed them in printmaking into artwork and fabrics. Soon after graduation, Zach and I moved up north to take up the scholarship, and the idea for the new eco brand really started to take off and overtake the master's learning process. With help from new friends, I set up a shotgun studio over a garage in a warehouse unit in Ramsbottom, and I started to painstakingly make my products one by one. Demand soon outstripped supply within a course of about 3 months, due in no small part to the website I'd signed and promoted as part of the masters that I'd won a place on. I soon realised that to sell to the public, I would have to increase production at the same time as making the strategic change to sell to trade to ensure that the amount of product I made did not sit around affecting my cash flow while losing me money in storage. And so I decided to look for help in manufacturing my product on a larger scale. Now, my products were based on design for children using art for children. And during my degree, I learned about the Picassos and the Miros of the world, who all use very, very, very naive art forms. And everybody thinks they're wonderful. And part of my dissertation for that first degree was researching child art. So on the left here, you've got a picture of what Zach confidently told me when he was about 1. There was a woodlouse, and you can see it. So I sort of transposed it with stitch onto a product. And part of what I did was at his nursery, he went to the most brilliant nursery, which is based at Singleton Hospital in the car park there. And I used to go in with things that I'd sewn using designs that Zach had done and show them to the other little people. And they all absolutely 100% recognised the artwork, but they all thought it was something different from the other. So I thought, God, I wanted something here. Not everybody wants Disney-fied, like Winnie the Poohs and stuff. Some kids want something that they can really connect to. And part of my thesis showed that in the world, there's an amazing writer called Rhoda Kellogg, and she found that children in the Congo, Scandinavia, Britain, South America, anywhere, they all draw the same images from birth. They all draw the same images, and the minute they go to school, that talent evaporates and becomes generic. So I thought, well, that's an idea for a product. I might start making things. And do you know what? No one was making eco-organic, sustainable, unbleached, natural products for children. And I thought, well, I just incorporate the two, and that's what Nuna was. So the early moment of realising that a change needed to be made from me making these little things one after the other and realising I was never going to make any money to survive, it coincided to realise it was going to be difficult to find anyone to process the textile I had developed and patented while on my degree, which made the Nuna range of products unique. So that was a lamb's wool that I would wash and dry 3 times and razor in between each process, so that when it was made into a product, if you put it in the washing machine, it wouldn't shrink further, but it was completely unbleached lamb's wool. So after taking a staggering number of orders for the product I hadn't yet made at a major trade exhibition at the NEC at the end of 2005, which was a complete hunt, and I basically tagged on to the end of someone else's stand. The first time Nuna was shown to the buying trading public, I realised there was no way back. I had Mothercare and John Lewis queuing up, saying, "Can you explain what eco means, or organic, or ethical? But this sounds really good. Let us know when you're ready." So at that first show, I was bemused to find how little awareness people had of the benefits of eco products and how unwilling they seemed to be, whether trade or consumer customers, to accept that it was a way of giving real quality to customers at the same time as giving them the opportunity to invest in a product with longevity that doesn't hurt anybody. No one, it seems, really got the concept of organic and toxin-free textiles being used in products for children, and having them made by well-paid, happy, healthy employees was imperative for me. So things then started to change. I simply could not find anyone in the UK to help me make my product. There was no central directory to refer to, no networking system to join, no practical advice available from any private or government body to guide me on how to get my product made. So that was it. armed with a few names and contact numbers from Dad, from his military days, several personal credit cards of his, and elephants on my stomach, I connected with some Chinese manufacturers in the early days of the internet, made appointments and flew to Hong Kong. Within a day of chasing my appointments, I felt duped. One manufacturer suggested they meet me at the station to get to the factory, which was 3 days away. That's 3 days each way. My return flight to the UK was a week away, so with limited funds, I just girded my loins and got an entry visa and flew to Vietnam to meet another one of Dad's contacts who I hadn't really planned on meeting. By the end of 2005, I had made the decision to put the completion of the Masters on interruption and set up a workshop in Ho Chi Minh, Old Saigon, in partnership with a Vietnamese businesswoman who I met, and within 3 days we decided we were best friends and that we could work together. So for 6 years, that factory ran, employed 28 people to process and make the new range of products. I had no outside investment in business. I had to purchase the industrial machines needed to manufacture the product in the UK, ship them by sea out to the new workshop, and travel back and forth over several months to set up the management and training of staff in the new facility before final production started. So in this picture, you've got Noreen, who was my only employee in the UK, showing the staff how to use these machines, and they were only used, because it was a communist state, they were used to sort of 50-year-old cranky machines that kind of bolted and welded together. So these sort of brand new sparkling machines were just complete novelty. And I learned there also that people don't use furniture. They all like to sit on the floor on cushions, which at 6 foot I found quite hard. But nevertheless, I did it. And the humidity was 95%. So they don't even glow. They literally cope with it. And I would sit there dripping with the heat of the day. And they just, I think they started to respect me for it a bit, even though I was usually a wet puddle by the end of each day. So the new factory that I created was a terraced house that we found in a residential area, away from real industry where everybody just clocks in and clocks out. So the workers enjoyed a shaded courtyard with hammocks for rest periods, a cook and a cleaner, and overall European standard of working conditions that I felt were appropriate. And that maintained staff loyalty, and no one ever left in the 6 years that I had the factory. I paid above local rates of pay. I created an after-school play area and tutor for the kids, and I passed autonomy on day-to-day decision to my Tran, who was the lady that I started the business with, as my business partner. So through my contacts and efforts, the workshop also, because I'm not one for putting all my eggs in one basket, also made own label product for a diverse range of household brands, including Nature et Découverte, which is a French business, Eden Project down in Cornwall, and a product range for Habitat. They were all completely engaged with the fact that I was running ethical manufacturing, and I was big on taking photos and allowing them to go and visit the factory if they wanted to. And Nature et Découverte did actually go, so did John Lewis. They went to check. They said, "You're not breaking any sign barriers, but we can see what you're doing and we love it." So our USP was the ability to produce quality textile goods in a clean environment, the highest standards at an affordable cost in low quantities. Nunu was the mainstay product, but the workshop had scope to diversify and grow, which in turn took pressure off Nunu as sole client. So I wasn't under pressure to sell so much of Nunu that I had to basically pay 28 people's wages. We just set up this manufacturing unit so we could make for other businesses while we built up our own brand. But going back to my thesis, globalization, I found, is a growing 21st century phenomenon, creating both positive and negative impacts on society and the environment almost at a point of no return. Its march seems inexorable, with effects felt throughout the world, including but not limited to reduced genetic diversity in agriculture, loss of wild species, spread of exotic species, pollution of air, water, and soil, accelerated climate change, exhaustion of resources, and social and spiritual disruption. There are wars everywhere for all of these reasons. The market cannot be relied on to control the environmental and other costs of globalisation, and although its present dominance creates an impression of permanence, a conjunction of formidable limiting factors is even now acting to curb the process of globalisation, possibly to end it altogether. The architects of globalisation have ignored the social, biological, and physical constraints on their created system, and policy fixes cannot overcome these limited factors. More and more people are looking homewards to create products and brands, and that's a good thing, but it might be too late. Critics of globalisation have noted that global free trade promotes the social and economic conditions most likely to undermine its own existence. The same can be said of the biological and physical limiting factors, especially in the short term, the dwindling supplies of cheap energy. The necessary opposition that is formed to counter the worst features of globalisation must keep its dangerous side effects in the public eye and develop alternative, workable, socio-economic systems that have a strong regional element and are not dependent on centralised complex policies. Differing effects on different markets present problems for policymakers, where a one-fits-all policy is neither practical nor supportable, as even before the onset of populist reactions to global capitalism and the perceived lack of decision-making on moral, ethical, and environmental issues. The consequences of globalised production and consumption are politically challenging, requiring governments and international institutions to find solutions, leading then to an increase in international trade and an increase in competition between companies. The causal factors have led to cost-cutting and outsourcing of labour and increased levels of inequality and poverty in many parts of the world, and globalisation has decreased the diversity of local economies as companies now move to countries where labour is cheaper, which in turn has caused an increase in global economic instability, with financial crises occurring simultaneously in multiple countries. So when I was looking for somewhere to manufacture Nunu, I was enthusiastically shown around what the locals called workshops, and it was just disgusting. I can't tell you. There were workshops next to open sort of streams of, well, sewers, basically. There were children, same age as my grandkids, like 9-year-olds, sleeping in the heat of the day with no shade because they were exhausted and they were being made to work. And I was just appalled. And I said, this can't happen. This just cannot happen. But they just didn't get that it was wrong from my perspective or from anybody's perspective, which is why I decided to set up, rather than in a factory, set up in a house so that there was at least a level of comfort and manageability. Looking back, I have no idea how I went from down and out to businesswoman. There's me in the top right setting. I lost a lot of weight out there, actually, must be said. The people I work with and effectively spend 2/3 of my life with are as important to me as every other part of my life. The 24 hours a day that make me who I am. I feel a strong responsibility to the people who work with me, and I'm very conscious of the knock-on effect that their happiness at work has on their own family environments as well. I set up my businesses to deliver social enterprise at its best without actually knowing that that's what it was labelled. It was a business run smart and set against measurable performance indicators that I set, and one which never lost sight of the focus on the individual. There are issues that affect every business, and there are always pressures that the financial bottom line is where it needs to be. The ethical nature of business ensures that we have always focused on where we are investing surpluses. So in our case, in stock and training, employment and the environment. It looks like a virtuous circle, and anticipating using a practical methodology to demonstrate wider social impact, in my view, can only succeed. But it's really difficult because no one gets it. No one else seems to want to do it. Everybody just wants the money and run. And in my opinion, you know, when you're dead and buried, you can't take it with you. So might as well do something with it while you're here. Both of the social enterprise businesses I established had very ambitious corporate strategies and followed strict grid business principles focused around people, and that was my mission. I do believe that the rhetoric around social enterprise is a little bit dismissive, if not depressing. There is a view that social enterprise can fill the gaps left by government cuts. that it's a third sector business model, but it's not. There is another way and another view that the sector is fluffy and not serious. But to me, social enterprise means smart business. To me, profit itself is not a dirty word, but it's the key to what you do with surplus funds. There was no scope for manufacturing my product in the UK back then. It was too expensive. There were no manufacturers. Everybody makes things in production lines, so you can't change production of making like polo shirts. You're making thousands and thousands. You can't just stop to make sort of half a dozen or something else that someone wants. There were too many rules and regulations and red tape, so I just decided to do what I wanted on the hoof. And around that, established all the sales and the products and the manufacturing. I found a fabric supplier to make the basic wool fabric in Italy, and he had to ship it to Vietnam to be processed. I had all the packaging made from virgin materials in the UK. I had a website for trading consumer purchases. I exhibited everywhere. I set up a system where everybody gets trained with the same skills, so that if one falls off or falls ill, then everyone else knows exactly how to do it. So you never know who's made that product because everybody does it the same way. So here's some of the products that I developed. I was the first company to import bamboo textile into the UK, which is the most sustainable plant. However, its manufacturing properties, the way you make it is not strictly sustainable because they dip it in acid to strip the fibres and make bamboo. But bamboo is the fastest growing crop in the world. And everything I used was natural. So silk, organic cotton, and that was the wool textile that I developed for the new fabric. And there's some more. So we did organic clothing. I bulk bought cotton socks from Tesco, from their head office, and made sock monkeys. Because it's the only place I could find stripy cotton socks. I love stripy cotton socks, by the way, so it was just a thing. And they were one of our best sellers. And then we made little booties out of scraps. We made balls and we made silk blankets, like cot covers. So if you notice on every single one of these, there's artwork. And that was all Zach's artwork. So we had spiders, we had fleas, we had cows, we had ladderbugs, we had woodlice, and we had slugs. That was a slug, by the way. These slugs. And that picture on the right was kind of our branding. Very natural, very naive, very simple, very unpretentious. So, during the time that we did it, I literally went with a suitcase abroad and set up stand. I used to go order ahead from IKEA, get them to deliver the furniture, set up stand, sell the stuff, and then auction off my IKEA furniture. So I just travel with a suitcase with Nuni products and a spare pair and pants. That was basically that's the way that I did it, because nobody taught me how to do it. I just thought, I'm just going to do it because there doesn't seem to be any set way. So in its heyday, Nunu sold in John Lewis through all their stores, inline and online, in-store and online, in Takashimaya in Japan and New York, Phoenix in the UK, FAO Schwartz, which was then the biggest toy shop in the world, in New York, in Natura Découverte in France. We sold through distributors listed there, which is really exciting. I met all of those at trade fairs, and they'd come up to me and say, lovely product, want it, how much do I have to buy to be your distributor in that country? Again, I just made it up as I went along and got them to sign something, and then they bought shed loads of it and represented it, and it was just like a snowball. So my favourite part was going to trade exhibitions, and Zach and my stepchildren basically had to come with me. So we had lots of holidays and lots of travels. And I think Denmark was your favourite, wasn't it? It was amazing. So we just go and do these shows and just wing it. And it was just a fantastic experience. Nunu won lots of awards. Best product at Maison Objet in Paris, These are just some of them: Sustainable Product of the Year, Eco Product of the Year, Gift of the Year. So it was amazing. It was the first eco, ethical, sustainable, organic product to go into John Lewis in the children's department. So it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it all. And meanwhile, all the folks are happy making the product. And then
But also meet today the new businesswoman of the year. She's Jo Ashburner from Cardiff. She picked up the award at a ceremony in London last night, beating off the 700 finalists to claim the top prize. Her company, Nunu, makes soft felt comfort blankets for her children.
Coming up here on Breakfast, Startup Star, we're going to be meeting the Cardiff entrepreneur who's been crowned the Businesswoman of the Year.
Now, we have another award winner on Breakfast. This is Jo Ashburn. She is the National Businesswoman of the Year. She picked up the award at a ceremony in London last night, beating off 7 other finalists to claim the top prize. This is the product that won it. Jo, good morning.
Good morning.
To you, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
The winning product is what?
Then called Nunu Comfort Blankets.
It's a blanket.
Yes, that's right. They're comforters. They're made from felted lamb's wool. It's an organic textile, which is patented to Nunu
The
design.
key bit of it seems to me this bit, I don't know if we can pick this up on the camera or not, is this bit here, which looks like a little, it's like a little cloth ear, I suppose.
Yes, they're all embroidered individually, and they all have child art imagery.
Which I suppose if you're 2 years old,
Oh, it's really,
it's probably
you can relate to it. Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
not much just for you or me, though.
No.
Rubbing my head all morning. What's different about this? What's different from the hundreds of other baby blankets that you can get in places like Mother Care or Baby Gap?
It's a quality product and it's affordable, and it's a new textile. It's very lightweight, and it's a natural fibre, which is very popular at the moment.
The person standing beside you, of course, you'll have recognised as Richard Uncle, who, as well as being the star of Dragon's Den, is also one of the judges of the awards last night. Rachel, welcome. Thank you for turning up after what I assume was a late night for most of you last night. National Businesswoman of the Year. You see that title and you sort of think, well, maybe someone like Barbara Cassani, who set up an airline from scratch, or Marjorie Scardi, who runs a FTSE 100 company. And I don't want to be disparaging, but the maker of babies' blankets doesn't seem like in the same category.
Well, the Grat02 Businesswoman of the Year Award was really about startup entrepreneurs and really encouraging women to get into business. And, you know, I mean, it's like saying Anita Roddick isn't a credible businesswoman because she did, you know, toiletry type products. And I think there's a whole new wave of feminine businesses out there that have a product at the heart of it that women feel really passionate about and can make money out of and create wealth. And that's fabulous.
And Jo, this is something I imagine you got the idea from something in your own life. You've got a young son.
I have Zach, yes, and he's the artist behind all this. I did a design degree, graduated 2 years ago, and won a scholarship to do a master's on the basis of this business idea. And it became very apparent after a couple of months that I had a very viable business.
What difference does winning this award make to you? What do you think? The difference do you think it would make?
Well, it hasn't sunk in yet, but I think it's going to have a phenomenal effect on our sales and the growth of the business and the growth of our manufacturing capability, which is really important.
Very nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Jo and Richard Uncle from Dragon's Den.
So that was a really interesting experience for me. 15 minutes of fame, everybody's entitled to it. I literally did not know it was going to happen. I was invited to a party. I'm always up for a party. Dressed up, arrived, cameras flashing. I thought, oh my God. And Danny Moog turned up, I think, in a limo, and it was all very exciting. And then everybody standing around. I remember talking. There were lots of intense looking men in black polo neck jumpers and Royal Orbison glasses, and girls in sort of really pretty dresses and stuff. And I remember thinking, I'm so in the wrong place. I don't know what I'm doing here. And they started talking about someone on stage about manufacturing and ethical and how impressed they'd been and all this sort of thing. And then they mentioned the word Vietnam. And I remember thinking, oh my God, someone's manufacturing in Vietnam. How cool is that? I must go and talk to them. And I didn't have my glasses on because my boyfriend had told me that the dress and the glasses didn't go. So I had no idea what was going on. I'm blind as a bat without my glasses. Anyway, so next thing I know, they say my name. And I was, what? And I got pushed up on stage, as you saw, said thank you, da, 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 da. I didn't say anything. I didn't have a a thank you speech lined up. And I was so excited that ethical manufacturing had been was a thing, because they'd made a big thing of talking about it. The first thing someone asked me when I got off the stage, microphone, was, "Who are you wearing?" I was like, "Sorry, do you not want to talk about?" And they were like, No. Sorry, who are you wearing? I said, "I don't know, Monsoon or something." And they were disgusted. Anyway, so then I went to the bar. I don't actually drink, but at that point I was considering anything. And I went to the bar, and this woman came up to me in a sort of white, long sort of tunic top and trousers and flip-flops, and just looked really out of place. And she said, "Jo, well done." And I said, "Thank you so much." And I talked to her for about an hour. She said, "Oh my God, I haven't even told her who I am. I'm so sorry, my name, and that's my husband Hugh. I'm Kath Kidston." I was like, "Okay, cool." And she was like, "Oh my God, it's so nice that someone normal has won this." And I said, "I'm not sure I'm normal anymore." I said, "I'm thinking about and it's going to be so rich and it's going to be so exciting." Anyway, we drank champagne all night. I've never before had bouncers standing by a rope letting me in and out because I was the guest of honor. It was very exciting. And then I skipped down the tube, kissing everybody, telling everybody I had won this award. And the next day I had dark sunglasses on. And the fact that I actually was coherent in that staying at the stock exchange, having been picked up by a BBC limo from my mate's house in South Woodford, was a miracle. I was still hammered because I'd been drinking champagne all night. And then my friend put me on the train, and I was pretty much catatonic back to Manchester. But God, what an experience. And it was great, and I really, really enjoyed it. But there's a point at which you think, I can't do this anymore. So I'm just going to. And that point came when I started going to trade fairs, and I started seeing stuff that looked really weirdly similar to my products. And I'd go up to them, and they didn't know who I was, I think. And I'd say, "So what's really nice? Oh yeah, it's the new eco-ethical, sustainable thing. And do you know, Nuno, well, this is better." And I was thinking, hang on a second. And then as this little caption says, "I'm not original creative, so I'll just steal your idea." And that at that point, I'd been going for a good while, and I just thought, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I just don't want to do it anymore. It's a really great business. It's a really great product. What can I do? How can I move on without the business? How can I do this? I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do it anymore. And one of the other things, winning that award was a mixed blessings. It was the most amazing thing for my self-confidence. So I'm actually quite a shy person, but I also started to hate it because the business became all about me. And I wasn't making the product, it was all the guys that I work with that were making it. And I just felt a bit of a sort of imposter syndrome. So I approached In Kind Direct, which was founded by the now King, as an efficient and easy way for companies to donate surplus consumer products to good causes. So I decided literally, and within 3 months, I gave the staff in Vietnam a year's notice and paid their wages for a year, and they kept making other products for other people. But in 2016, I gave £62,000 worth of product that I had in the UK to them, and it benefited 199 basically voluntary and community organisations, including children's charities, and the product was sold to help with charitable needs. So I felt that was really appropriate for Noonie because it had been made in an ethical environment and it was being allowed to die, basically, ethically. So that's what we did with Noonie. Which brings me on to the next stage, because as you might have gathered from my school days, I very much don't keep still. And my strongest supporter, mentor, hero was my dad. My dad, who passed away a couple of years ago. But he had set up a flag manufacturing business in the late 60s. He was part of the fabric of manufacturing in the Welsh Valleys. He, when Burberry closed its doors and when Gossard closed its doors, he took all the staff and retrained them so that they had jobs. He employed thousands of people over the years that he did this, and he got the contract to the Ministry of Defence contract. He made all the flags for the military in the UK and Norway, and he made flags for the world, and he was the only manufacturer. But it wasn't, there was no printing stuff in the days when he did it, in the 60s and 70s. This was all stitched, all cut and stitched. So a Union Jack, for instance, has 31 pieces. And you need to know how to double foul the seams and sew it together so that it flies properly and doesn't warp with the weft. So this is the middle picture. So Dad started up this business and he always sponsored the Royal Welsh unit at Morva, and I continued doing it when I took the business over. But he in 2000 and so he this is, I don't know if you know the ice factory, the ice house in the marina. So back in the day, North Dock was full of those brick buildings, and they just came along and demolished everything. And there's a very cool story about Dad, and it just shows how his social values meant everything. He could see all these all the council workers coming on and smashing down all these stacks and buildings, and he was just horrified. So one day the story goes that the breaker ball turned up with the crane and all the people with clipboards and what have you. And Dad came out of the factory, which that other picture is taken in. He came out of the factory. I mean, obviously that bridge and everything wasn't there. There was literally nothing there except all these other buildings that were being demolished. And he came out and he said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we've come to knock this down. You need to get out." He said, "All my staff are in there. It's going to take a while to pack up." And he said, "And anyway, you're not allowed to knock it down." And they said, "Yeah, well, here, look, piece of paper." And he said, "No, it's got a preservation order on it." And they said, "No, it has." He said, "It's got. Oh, look, it's at home. I'll go and get it." So he got on his bicycle with his dog, and as they did, just drove round, got on, came over the bridge here, and as I told you, the big blue house on the corner was our home, and Dad also had set up the chandlery, which was there. But instead of stopping at the house to get it, he cycled on to the civic centre and went in, and within about half an hour had persuaded the clerk to give him a preservation order for that building. And she was a bit, I think everybody was on lunch or something, so she gave him the preservation order. And he cycled back and he gave it to the guy that was standing there with the getting impatient. And they went, "Well, it's dated today." And his dad said, "You snooze, you lose." And that's why that's still standing there today. And so I believe it's a restaurant now. But literally, he was also, Dad was part of the development of Cardiff Bay Marina and Swansea Marina. Dad was intrinsic in getting that sorted, and he had the ship's chandlers there. And yeah, so he was a legend. I might be biased, but I believe he was. And he literally employed so many people, gave people skills. So these people, when all the factories started closing down and valleys, Dad was the kind of thin end of the funnel that everybody came through, and he just retrained everybody. So yeah, so referring back to my thesis for a minute, despite extensive research into the subject, there appears to be no single accepted measure of social value, of the good that people do when they're running businesses. It's almost kind of like, he who shouts loudest gets the most attention, and it shouldn't be like that, in my opinion. So it's all relative to the individual, the business objectives, canniness, greed, and accountability. There is a definite need to reconsider the existing economic model, which everybody seems to use. And what they do now is people have business models, and then because it's a cool thing to do, they slot in the social value aspect, rather than have a model of a business built up from the ground with social value in its foundations. So the people, At a social value conference in London I attended about 10 years ago, I listened to a group of senior management level company people spout forth on stage on how their businesses the Procter and Gambles of this world were doing so much good. When it came to question time, I stood up and asked whether big business could collaborate on opportunity with smaller businesses built on social value at their core. The response was dismissive and quite frankly arrogant and rude. The audience was open-mouthed as I broke protocol by questioning his response, and before too long the sparkly facade of the man on the stage fell away and he blurted out that social value is a great PR tool but not practical in profitability terms. You could have heard a penny drop as the realisation of the admission of how social value in business is viewed by those disingenuous enough to use it for their own rather than genuine benefit plunked home. I didn't hang around after that seminar. I'd heard enough fakery for one day. Come again? No. There have to be opportunities for social enterprise in virtually any market, but they must be properly resourced, run smart, and led efficiently. As a social entrepreneur, which is what I grandly call myself, this is no other label, I'm not here to take business away from the private sector. I see us working as a strong partner to the private sector, where those SMEs benefit from our corporate social responsibility by association, but without the bells on. I am, of course, always interested to see other individuals, companies, and organisations help those less fortunate than the rest of us. But time and time again, I'm bewildered by the lack of impact some of the initiatives to train, for example, marginalised, stigmatised, disabled, immigrant, or other people have long-term on the stability of the community or local economy. I have a view that there is a presumption by the business community that someone who is visibly different in any way from the average norm is perhaps not as good a punt as an employee who doesn't have any of those perceived failings. It just doesn't add up that public, private, or other money is spent on training people, able-bodied, marginalised, or otherwise, with every good intention, but that a proportionately small amount of money is spent on support for the businesses and the job creation that they're being trained for in the first place. So when I decided to not do junior anymore, at that time concurrently, my father had effectively lost his business because it had been mismanaged by someone else. And he was devastated, and all this knowledge, all the stuff that literally I'd grown up with, that I'd known forever, they were going to be out of work. And Dad was just didn't know what to do, where to turn. Having helped government, the Welsh government and the WDA as it was, and others for so long, they turned around and said, look, the manufacturer's dying, mate, we can't do anything about it. So Dad and I sat down and I said, well, how about all these contacts that I've created with Nunu? They could be good for something. I don't want to do Nunu anymore. God forbid that I ever get involved with flags, because I've avoided it my whole life. But you know, we've got the Jubilee coming up and we've got the Olympics coming up. John Lewis doesn't sell flags. How about we make flags? And I go to the buyers in John Lewis who I know, and I say to them, you need to be selling flags. So that's exactly what I did. And they went, this is so random, Joe. Flags, what? I said, look at them, they're beautiful. They're stitched, they're made in the UK. You've got the Olympics, you've got the Jubilee. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I'm offering you, like, it's money on a plate. So they gave in, obviously, and they put in an order that basically started the business up and kept everybody employed for the first 9 months of trading. And the picture here is a Union Jack that I made out of silk that was turned into a dress that was on the catwalk at the Olympics. So running a business all the time is quite hard work, but when you actually get to be creative, that's really cool. So that's one of my proud moments. So yeah, so we set up this business, and latterly it was in Clydach in a factory and I employed a lot of ladies, but we did things differently. So so every person that came to me, I don't really care what flavour anybody is or where they come from, as long as they've got the fundamental kind of core values of, you know, honesty and loyalty and the willingness to learn and ability to you know, some of these girls, literally, Mickey here, when she came to me as 18, she was an elected mute She didn't talk to us for the first year. She had very severe stress-related psychological issues. She ended up working for me for just under 10 years, and she's now a mum, and she's brilliant. She's a brilliant, brilliant machinist. But she hadn't even touched, she didn't know how to turn a sewing machine on when she first came to me. So that was what my business was all about, was actually giving people skills they could be really, really proud of, and creating things, but not mass manufacturing. We made one-offs. So we were making, one of the other big jobs that we got soon after was this one, the NATO summit. And the story about that goes that I was lying on my sofa at night about a month before the NATO summit, thinking, I wonder who's making their flags. Because like, if somebody was making it, they'd be talking about it. So I sent the only tweet I've ever sent to the Foreign Office, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and said, so who's making your flags then? And the next morning I got a phone call saying, we actually haven't organised them. I was like, oh my God, it's in a month's time. And they said, okay, can you meet us at Celtic Manor? And I said, I'll be there in an hour. So I was. They sat down and they said, we need one for every country. They go, we need stands for this, we need that. And I said, leave it with me, we'll do it. And I remember literally laughing the whole way home, thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do it? And I went in and all the girls, guys looked at me and they said, oh shit, Jo, what have you done? And I told them and they were like, okay, so is there overtime involved? I'm like, yeah, and weekends and whatever you want, and I'll get pizza every night. And so we did it. And we delivered everything on time by 12 o'clock the day before the conference started. And it was amazing. And we did it. And we knew that we could do it. We knew that we could produce all these things. So we were cutting and stitching, and then other things happened. We had people in through the Shaw Trust and other charities who literally couldn't work because they were so chronically frightened and were disabled, and they would come in, and the girls just took them under their wings and trained them up. And some of them stayed, some of them went on to other jobs, worked on the basis of what we trained them. I started an apprenticeship programme, which was the first one in Wales for the textile manufacturing goods. And we just had an amazing business. The picture up here was, I got a call out of the blue from the US Embassy in London, saying that they'd seen us on something, and could we make a custom flag for the ambassador's private quarters? And I said, well, yeah, of course can. And I said, look, this is the big deal, okay? And I said, we are a social enterprise. They said, yeah, that's why we're coming to you, because we don't want it to be a kind of a corporate thing. We want it to be like, made by real people kind of thing in this country. And they said, look, why don't you come up to London? So I said to the girls, do you want to go? They were like, oh my God. So these are the ones that had the courage to go. And that's Mickey, as I say, who'd come to us. And literally, we piled into my car. We drove up to London. Nia took the Ferrero Rocher because she thought it would be funny to do so. We went in, the ambassador met us. That was the flag that we made for his private quarters. We had tea and cookies with the ambassador in his private quarters with the COA floating around. We were shown around the state-of-the-art building. And it was just an amazing life experience because none of the girls had ever been to London. It was just, and who knew that flag making in a social enterprise could be interesting, So I've been determined to alter the attitude of other businesses and other people in any small way possible, creating a vehicle which trains people for real, actual long-term jobs, old style. I actively sought out those people who wanted to work, wanted to learn skills, wanted to belong to something long-term. As an individual and as a business, and I offered to train, to make, to sell, to grow, to sell again. believing this would have a knock-on effect for the great good socially and economically. So in my opinion, you give someone a goal, an aspirational motivation, and they will give their best to achieve for you in the return. Each person within the business has responsibilities, but instead of everyone focusing on their own specific job within the business, like a separate business cog, I built the business model so that everyone who works in the business took ownership of their own role and their responsibilities, be awarded, rewarded, educated, and developed for the long haul, and to feel each could treat the business as their own, and that there was no hierarchy. And it worked. Some of the projects that we did were, we started making things for films. So we made for Vanity Fair, that was in the Telegraph. So these are replica historical flags. We made for a Netflix series called Cursed, and we made loads of different amazing castle flags and stuff. One of our last big jobs that we did was Ridley Scott's Napoleon. We did and my father was the consultant on that to get it historically correct. So we made all the land and sea flags for that film. This is Boys in the Boat, George Clooney film about the Olympic rowers. And we made the flags for Downton Abbey, amongst others. So we really enjoyed what we did. So, and then just to show off a bit more, these are some of our customers. We were signed to Disney and we made all the flags for Willow, and we made flags for Harry Potter as well. Welsh National Opera, European Space Agency, we still make for them. Mammoth Screen, Royal Yacht Squadron, Lucasfilm, obviously, Warner Brothers, Nike. We actually, excuse me, we actually created a flag and installed it on top of the Nike flagship store on the Champs-Elysees in Paris 3 or 4 years ago, just before the pandemic. So that was exciting. It was a trip to go to Paris. And randomly, we make the flags every year for the North Pacific fishing fleet, which surrounds Japan. So, yeah, and Apple we make for United Nations, Amnesty International. So, yeah, and Piaget, for instance, is on Bond Street. So we make a lot of flags that hang outside in gold and black and what have you for outside fancy schmancy shops. And then in the midst of all this, I was just so honoured to receive recognition for the work that I was doing with my team. So, yeah, I became a governor of the Wales Quality Centre in 2018, won lots of awards, and I was actually appointed to the board of MAID, which was the vehicle through which I got my master's degree in 2019. So, yeah, it's been quite a journey for an youth girl, you know. So, back to the sort of academic side of it, a leading author recently published a series of white papers called Social Value Manager, representing a body of research in more than 150 organisations and social value related professionals were interviewed with the aim of exploring, establishing and embracing the emerging social value management related job roles, shaping the way the private sector engages with communities. I mean, it sounds like jobs for the boys to me, but anyway. The papers conclude that key challenges for these professionals are methods of reporting to stakeholders, so the varying social value frameworks, impact reporting methods, and differently set KPIs. The standardised social value framework was listed as a high priority, and it was agreed that an agreed, basic, global, refined and updated framework from which to build a more relevant social value system is much needed. So, we've got coming together the G8, the OECD and the European Commission approaching 7 principles which may offer the best opportunity for the standardisation of social value measurement. The focus on shared principles rather than shared detailed metrics may be the way of progressing the social value measurement debate through a common value base, providing a framework for bespoke applications to different circumstances. But ESG disclosures are voluntary, which not many people realise. Businesses do not have to divulge anything that they don't want to. and there are few consequences for grand baseless claims on or non-disclosure. So there is a striking discrepancy between the prevailing economic doctrine where profit is the sole goal of corporations versus the growing demand for companies to participate in initiatives aimed at solving social problems. This has prompted, ironically, what I call a generation of business scholars, and questions raised about whether corporate social initiatives have positive, negative, or no significant impact on business economic performance. Scholars talk about this and that and focus on facilitators who determine when these initiatives pay off for businesses. And although this topic has been addressed by many researchers, institutional determinants are understudied due to the focus on why businesses engage in social activities rather than how. So we still know better off, we don't know how they do it, except when you actually do it and you see the results. So one of the other things I do on the side, I am a trustee director of Homeless Pembrokeshire, which is a registered charity. And when I was working, when we were building up the flag making business, one of the things that became very apparent was that a lot of the people who came to me were, quite frankly, unhygienic and didn't have anywhere really that they were living, men and women. And homelessness became started to have a big impact on the way that we were doing our business. And I did things like I went to the church in the Uplands, there's a huge church there, St James's, I think it's called. And they were trying to find a way of getting the community involved in that church. Because they had like 3.5 people in the congregation, and they wanted to open the doors. And I said, why don't we create a workshop in this church and install showers and whatnot, and people who don't have anywhere and just need warmth. And this is a church. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I just said, why don't you open your doors? I don't understand why you close your doors the whole time. So it went before the parish council. I did my pitch, but they turned it down. So I thought, God, I've got to do something, because we're struggling with these people. It's not their fault, and we need to be able to give them work opportunities, but they need the infrastructure. So I approached several charities, Llanai, the Woolwich, a lot of them. And surprisingly, the Woolwich turned around and said, do you know what? We're looking to buy into new premises in Swansea. How about we buy a premises? We provide all the pastoral care and deal with all the drug issues and the psychological issues and everything. And you have like a workshop and you can give them skills. And I thought, oh, it's brilliant. And on the back of that, I went to Park Prison and spoke to the governor, and was horrified to learn that inmates are expected to work for £10 a week, but work full 5 days a week. And I said to them, well, why don't we do this? Because there's a real connection between people in prison, and they come out, they're given 42 quid, and they're expected to find a job and somewhere to live. But what about if we train them in prison, give them this job, make this product, they know how to do it. When they get released, they've automatically still got a job, but it's working in our premises, and we can deal with it. And then the Woolwich could deal with all the other stuff, because I'm not a psychologist, and I'm certainly not a drug dealer or anything. I don't know any of that, but we'll do this part if you do that part. So they were very excited. They wrote a letter of intent. I went to Welsh Government and asked for money. And you know what? Time ticked on. And after about a year of endless meetings, I don't really, meetings about meetings, which is just so irritating because nobody makes a decision. I sat down with the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, at the time, and I said to them, look, this is the product. This is what I want to do. What do you reckon? And he said, look, the problem is, Joe, he said, we're given 34 million by central government every year, and then all the charities basically write proposals to get a bit of that money, and that's what the charities use to deliver what they deliver. I said, but homelessness is going up, not down. So I went to, and I spoke to the chief executive of the shelter in Wales, and she said, the thing is, Joe, She said, if your business model works, we're at the job. I was absolutely horrified. I just thought, Christ, it's all pen pushers. You don't actually do anything for these people. So at that point, I decided that we had to do something. So I approached Trinity St. David, who knew me well, and I said, look, I've developed this coat, which has got an integral sleeping bag. It's fireproof, pee-proof, waterproof, stab-proof. It's padded, it's comfortable, and it doesn't look like it's anything other than like a really cool, like Carhartt coat. I want to make them, but I need tracking stuff inside it so I know where these coats are. Because if we make them and they cost 500 quid each, if we make them, I want to be able to track them, and I want to be able, in the first instance, so that basically we don't lose them, because we need to gather data to show people's body temperature when they're sleeping at night. Wearing one of these as opposed to in a thin tent wearing soggy clothes, and I just needed to have all this data. So the university got me involved with Astute. We got funding for research, and the fabric that I developed, I actually got the idea from London Underground seats. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but they've kind of got a mesh in them. And they've been there since the 70s, so there must be something that's working in them. So I found out the manufacturer of it, and I layered it up in a composite with 7 layers. And I produced this, and I gave it to the university to test, which they did, and it came back as life-saving. That you can wear it down to 30 degrees. Yeah, 30 degrees. That it was stab-proof. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So I went back to Welsh Government and I said, look, I'm exhausted. I can't do this on my own. I would like to give it to the Welsh Government to set up factories, places. This could be a world first. You have the product, you get people, you train people to make this, to give to people, and you could get the NGOs, instead of dropping towels and tents and stuff in war-torn areas or natural disasters, you just drop a load of roof, which is what we call the product. You just drop them in every shape, size, and it will save people's lives. And they wear it. It's not like they've got to carry it or leave it behind. And the Deputy First Minister said, Joe, he said, this is worth billions. I said, okay, so all I want is basically to help manage it and a wage. That's it. You can have the rest. And they said, we can't, because it's too left field. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to go to the press. So as you can see, I went to the press. I went to Trust Law, organisation which does pro bono patent work. Because we're a social enterprise, and because we were doing this, they did it for nothing, for the patent, intellectual property. I went to all the organisations that we were part of, the WCVA, went to the Disability Confident Authorities, all these people that we were members of. And I got the Chief Executive of FAMI, the Chief Executive of Social Enterprise UK, I got the Managing Director of Big Issue, I got all these people on the board of my business to make it happen. So there they are. And Professor Brown, who's the Vice Chancellor at Trinity St. David at that point. Sian James, who's a bit of a rebel MP. You might remember her from, she was MP for Swansea East. And Jackie Murray, who was part of Innovate UK. So a fantastic team. So there's the investment. I got a 15,000 Unlimited Grow It Awards. I personally put in 38 grand and all the hours that I was unpaid for and all these different things. So running total of 100,000, and we were really excited this was going to work. But you know what? Every time I went to a charity, they shut the door. They said no, because this is not what we do. They said, we're worried that if you make this roof coat bag, that you're going to encourage people to live rough. And I was like, that's just ridiculous. That's not going to happen. It's not offering them jobs. And Anyway, long story short, the whole thing was put on ice, and it is still on ice. But it was one of those things I thought, if we're making one thing, we can make another. If we're training people to do one thing, we can train them to do another. And to be honest, I got so exhausted with the whole thing and got run around so much that it was just one of those ventures that one of my failures. I worked on it for 9 years. I just could not get Welsh Government to do it with me, even though I had the big issues and everything behind me. Very sad. However, I came across this lady, Amanda, who was homeless. And long story short, 6 months later, she sets up a charity called Homeless Pembrokeshire. Incredible lady. She was homeless and she was running a charity to help homeless people. And I said, you know what? Sod these other charities, sod all these big boys with these big budgets and the wallet with 8 million in the bank and all this. I said, how about you and I hook up and we do roof together? So that's what we did. So we made a lot of roof, and we gave them to the charity, and they now distribute them to people, because obviously rural poverty, homelessness is almost worse than city homelessness in a lot of ways because of the elements. But so that's what we do. So my fee for today is going to Homeless Pembrokeshire because it's something I really believe in. So in conclusion, you'll be glad to hear, the proposition of social value as a core element of business is potentially the most overdue and valuable innovation for people and planet. As companies evolve, it is clear that social value and shareholder value are not interchangeable concepts. Social value is the impact of a business on society, while shareholder value is the financial gain and invested gains from a company's success, so it's personal rather than shared. With the emergence of social entrepreneurship, the importance of social value is increasingly in the forefront of business practices. You do not have to be a tree hugger to be into the ethics of social value. You don't. I'm not a tree hugger, but I believe in it as a model for the future. So combining the resourcefulness of traditional entrepreneurship with a mission to change society. But despite the growing emphasis on social value, there is still no agreed upon definition for what constitutes social value. And this lack of clarity can make it difficult for companies to understand how to incorporate it into their operations. So to utilise the concept of social value properly and effectively, we must learn how to see it so that the engine and all of its parts are correctly placed, going back to the car that I talked about at the beginning, so that it doesn't fail us when we need the means of moving forward the most. There is a need to promote the importance of social value measurement to drive learning and improvement as close as possible to frontline service delivery. This could be an antidote to PR exercises, allowing for demonstration of impact as much as the need to embed impact measurement in everyday practice. So just get rid of all the fakery, get rid of all the, we're doing all this, we're generating all these carbon emissions, and then we're doing this one little bit of good, but we're going to PR the hell out of that so that we look fantastic with twinkly bits on, but actually we're doing more damage. So integrated company social values are gaining traction in the global markets, but a definitive successful prototype of measurement has not yet been determined. So I believe it to be a must-have integration and process of business delivery and evaluation model, and it has to happen sooner rather than later. So ultimately, a unified and determined effort on part of every single one of us is needed to actively demonstrate the importance of corporate social responsibility initiatives. Small steps, and we will win. However, in my thesis, I felt that I was kowtowing too much to the predictability of a conclusion. So I decided to add an extra element, and I called it the repugnant conclusion. So this is actually a recognised method of conclusion, and it's a population ethics problem that states that a population with a lower quality of life can be better than a population with a higher quality of life. So there's a chap called Parfit, who wrote in something called Repugnant Conclusion, which raises difficult questions about the ethical implications of integrating social value into a business model, suggesting it is better to create a large population of people with a low quality of life than a small population of people with a high quality of life. So that would be the 99% of us and the 1% of them. The question of whether a time will ever arrive when there are more people in good health and wealth in the world than there are those with wealth and the power to make a change for the good is unanswerable. We know that mixing money and the delivery of real, genuine, life-changing social value is an anomaly. So that the 1% who really could make a change for the betterment of the world's people and environment. But we also know that good fortune is squandered by that small percentage of the population, and all of that which would make the difference to the majority in a lifetime is knowingly not shared. And I'm going to end on a quote by a chap called Armstrong, who says that when you find morally wrong outcomes that contradict your moral theory, then enrich your moral theory rather than twisting your moral judgment. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Joe. Are there any questions anybody's got for Joe?
Do you ever sleep?
No, I do now. I look after my grandkids, and I've taken some time out. I'm doing things that I want to do now for a while. I leave that to my son to do everything.
We often hear talks that are interesting, and that was astonishing, inspirational and thought-provoking all at once. It was an amazing
Thank you. Thank
lecture,
you.
I thought.
It's difficult. I mean, there's a lot I left out, but I just time is limited. So
Packed an awful lot into your life so far, and it must be, I mean, looking forward to see what you do next, basically.
and I look so young. I'm only 21.
We know you're right.
Yeah.
So just wanted to thank you on behalf of the Auditorium Association. Also,
Thank you for inviting me. I really thank you. It's an honour.
it's really marvellous lecture for us. And then also to thank Caroline Trace from university for all her help with the association. And the last piece of information is that there is a meeting in 2 weeks' time to go for a meal. Please the urge to do so, then now's your chance. But thanks once again, Joe. That was really, really interesting.
Thank you. Thanks.